to Stephen. He's going to be speaking on adult children of alcoholics. So Stephen, you can unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen, and I'm a grateful recovering person. I heard y'all mention author R, or Rico's name. He is part of my early recovery. I didn't know there was anything like recovery. Jan, I sent you a private chat message on here. If you could respond, please. I had no idea when I got here that there was anything like recovery, or that anyone was in recovery. I did not know I was an adult child. I wasn't a child of an alcoholic or adult child of an alcoholic. I came into ACOA and Al-Anon, if you will, through the back door. On August 19th, 1982, I was incarcerated at the Alfred D. Noyes Juvenile Detention Center for an indefinite period of time. I had been in trouble with the law at that point, probably for a good solid 4 years. And I thought I was doing okay. I was mad at everybody, the police. It was their fault. It was the judge's fault. It was this one and that one. And the judge, my mother's, all her sisters and my grandmother went in the courtroom, juvenile court. So nobody else was allowed in there but them and the sheriffs. And I remember the judge at the end of the day telling my mother and father, he said, Mr. and Ms. Barrett, you can't handle him, but I can. And I was placed there, what's called secure. So that meant the other kids could go outside in the yard and you could smoke in and out of the place in 82. But I've been looking for a Jan for a long time, because a person named Jan through H&I was bringing meetings into Noyes on Thursday nights. And I got introduced to a 12-step program. When I left Noyes, I went over to a place called Seneca House, and author Rico was one of the counselors there. And I stayed there going into the beginning of 1983, short program for back then, 28 days. And I began in recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction. At that point in my life, I understood that what I lived with was normal. I mean, it was what I lived with. It's what the children I associated with, the few that I did, it seemed like that was their home life too. I stayed sober, clean, going to meetings on a regular basis, having a sponsor, working steps, working with other people, being involved in the program with it was the first Rockville Metro over there in Rockville, Maryland. At a little more than a year clean, sober, once I was off probation, I decided I didn't have a problem with alcohol. I just couldn't sell drugs. That was my problem, selling drugs. That was the issue. I picked back up for a few months, but NA and AA had ruined my drinking and drugging, because, see, I found another way of life. I found real people. I didn't trust them at first, but I now know that that's because I didn't trust me. I never did anything for anyone without wanting and expecting something in return. I started back into recovery, and about 2.5 years in, I was suffering from depression, anxiety. I thought I was having flashbacks. I was so stressed out, I could look at a light switch in a meeting or in a room, and it would twist around. And I was seeing a doctor who was in the program, and every week he would take my urine and draw my blood. I was having regular panic attacks and being depressed. I left a couple things out. I was in a relationship, and I had become homicidal and suicidal. So I really wasn't doing well at about 2.5 years sober and clean. And this doctor who had been Dr. Griswold, John Griswold, he's passed away now. He was working with Joe Chambers. He put me in detox 2.5 years sober. And I was ashamed, embarrassed, and it turned out to be the greatest thing in my recovery. I didn't pick up. I continued not being under the influence, and I got the biggest shot of gratitude that I'd ever received in my life. I spent a week there. They sent me back to Seneca House, and they said similar things to me, like I wouldn't know a feeling if it hit me in my butt. And we talked about my family of origin. And by that point, my father was up at Father Martin Ashley's in treatment for his alcoholism. I was having feelings I didn't know how to identify. And I didn't know how to deal with them. Because while the other kids were growing up, I was busy throwing up and being out in the street, because it was easier to be out in the street than to be at the house. I thought being spanked with both ends of the belt, a horse whip, a riding crop, a fishing rod, a car antenna, I thought that stuff was normal. But what I was told is that child abuse. And then I could remember back, you know, when I was a kid, we didn't have air conditioning in the house. I grew up in Kensington, Silver Spring, Maryland. We didn't have air conditioners, so the window was open in the summertime. I can't believe now, as an adult of 3 grown children, that the police weren't at our house every week for what was going on over there. I remember looking on the inside of match packs back before Bic lighters. They used to have other kind of lighters, but on the inside of a match pack, it had a child abuse hotline. My father told me, he said, boy, you ever call that phone number, I'm gonna beat you around your body where the bruises will be on the inside and they won't even show. And he was serious. And, you know, a child in elementary school shouldn't be taught how to kill somebody with different things with their hands, or that everything's a weapon. My father come out of the Army. He was in Hell on Wheels Division, Tank Division in Germany. I don't believe that he set out to abuse me. I truly don't believe that. I think he wanted me to be tougher than he was. And that fuel with alcohol just didn't work out. I was, come to find out, the abuse and torture was abuse and torture. But the way our mind and body works is we can hide a lot of stuff from ourselves. So under the influence of drugs and alcohol, I became a violent person and a predator against other people, and a blackout drinker. I did not understand any of that noise or the first couple of years of my recovery, the anger, the hurt, the sadness, and all that twistedness, or why I was the way I was. I had a sponsor early on, Mike M., and he made a comment to me, and that stuck with me my entire recovery. He said, Steve, try looking for the good in other people. Have you tried praying for him or her? Have you tried praying for him for a couple of weeks or for a month? You know, and these are things that worked for me then, just like the steps, and they work for me today. About 2 years ago in downtown Frederick, my daughter, our oldest child, was stabbed by a man. And shortly thereafter, I was sitting in my truck across the parking lot from their apartment. He was out on the steps. And I had this thought in my mind, you know, if my foot slipped off this gas pedal, I could drive up them steps and drive over and kill this young man, 25 years old. And I asked God, I said, please forgive me that. God is I choose to call my higher power. And then I thought, but for the grace of God, there go I. He's 25 years old, never had a driver's license, never had a real job. When his mother OD'd, when his mother had a stroke the last time, they were more worried about her detoxing from her heroin habit than about the stroke recovery. I'm glad this thing recovery has been like an onion, thick and thin layers, because if everything that came to a head at 2.5, 3.5, 5.5, 15.5, 25.5, 30 years of recovery had come on me early on. I don't think I've been able to handle it or deal with it. I hear in the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about some being sicker than others and those with grave emotional and mental disorders, but we too can and do recover. And what I've learned in this program is if I trust people, and I trust my higher power, and I work the steps, that no matter what's going on in my life, this too shall pass. And although that terrible thing happened to my daughter, and what a selfish thing to even think or say, but I almost thought it hurt me more than her. As of today, we have 3 beautiful children in recovery. And it's only the second time in about 10 years, all 3 of them have been clean and sober. She's working in the recovery community. My wife and I have never had a drink or a drug in our home, a bong, a beer, a bottle of whiskey, or anything like that. And to watch our 3 children suffer, enter into and suffer from addiction was a horrible ride. I don't know how I'd have done it if I hadn't experienced those things in my life myself growing up. Growing up in a dysfunctional or alcoholic home, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I've spent my entire adult life in recovery, trying to help other people, trying to better myself, trying to better my family, trying to better my community around me. That's all a result of recovery. I know I'm a serial something, I'm not sure what it is, but I'd have been locked up or dead. Arthur Rico told me, he said a couple things early on in aftercare. He told me, said if I walked in a room and made eye contact with a young woman across the room and got that feeling inside of me like, wow, he said, Steve, you just go on and leave because you just found the sickest person in that room, at that party, at that dance, in that meeting. And I do so much better when I follow suggestions or directions. I had to try that out many times to prove him right. And it's been a beautiful ride. You know, I've really had some ups and downs. My wife and I, with our 3 kids, we've both been in recovery. My sister, I'm 56 years old. My sister's 49, and she introduced me to my wife when my wife was 16. I was 21 over at Montgomery General at a meeting. I said, I'm gonna date that girl when she turns 18. And when she turned 18, her boyfriend was working for me. I fired him, so he didn't have any money to take her out. So I started dating her. We've been together since for the past 30 years. Her boyfriend's really a nice guy, and we were at the fair last year, and I bumped into him, and he come by the next night. My wife was there getting a T-shirt signed by one of the Redskins, and he pulled her aside and talked to her, and they, you know, he was practicing recovery still. I was really impressed by that young man. We come across a fellow one day after work, coming home from work. He was up a tree going to hang himself over in Del Mercado in Montgomery County, and he was able to talk this man out of a tree from killing himself. But we were both in recovery. We were where we were supposed to be when we were supposed to be there. I don't believe there's any coincidences. That means that people's path who I've crossed or come in contact in recovery. I heard a fellow talking about downtown. We'd go downtown to meetings. It was a little different back then. But I'm just grateful. I know somebody else might want to talk or share something. I'm here to say that even with a dysfunctional ACOA background and being physically, sexually, mentally abused as a child, that we too do recover. We can and will recover if we're willing to work for it. You know, the promises have come true in my life, and they're still coming true today. It gets better and better and better as long as I don't pick up. And there's nothing today for me right now here today, worth picking up. The seasons, the colors in spring, summer, and fall all still seem to be brighter every single year. So with that, if anybody would like to share anything, I'd love to hear you.
I have a question, and that question is like, what is the structure of your meetings? Do they look like AA meetings or Al-Anon meetings?
Absolutely. So when in 1985, when I came out of Seneca House the second time, ACOA was in its infancy. And what they had done is basically taken an Al-Anon meeting and structured it around ACOA issues. I believe her name's Marsha Blackburn. She had wrote the book, Adult Children of Alcoholics. And as I opened that book, I mean, it was like me, every page. But the meetings, it's basically the same 12 steps applied a little bit differently, because as the 12th step, as a result of these steps, having had a spiritual awakening instead of trying to help other practicing alcoholics, it's to help other suffering ACOAs.
So is there a step working process?
Step working process?
Like, yeah, do you like officially work steps or?
Absolutely.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Stephen about ACOA? Are there any local meetings? Do you have a Zoom presence now?
Can't hear you.
Go ahead.
So do you have a Zoom presence now, Stephen? I mean, does ACOA have a virtual presence?
Yes, but very few compared to our other 12-step programs.
Okay. Do you have a website that you can post in the chat that people can check out your meetings?
Absolutely, I'll do that.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions for Stephen? You muted, James.
Yeah, not a question, but it's good to see you, Stephen. And just like you said, it's no such thing as a coincidence. I couldn't believe that day at the retreat when, cause I'm just telling my story, and I'll tell you that like Rico wouldn't give up on me, and me and him hung out from the time that I got one day clean. He came to my anniversaries. I would go to his, and I would go to his house and go to his basement, to his treatment program that he ran in his basement. And that was my man. And I couldn't believe that I come to Montgomery County, and here's a white guy in Montgomery County who knew Rico and said, Rico saved my life when I was 18 at Noise, right? So, that's God working there, man. I mean, the recovery community, that's what I'm saying. The recovery community is connected, whether we know it or not. We have so many people that do service work, and we touch each other's lives. Like you were talking about the guy who talked somebody down from hanging. We're so connected, but we don't know until we get on platforms like this and we realize how connected we really are. So it's just good to see you, and, keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah.
Hi there. I'm really, Stephen, thanks for your very moving remarks. Del Rey Club in downtown Bethesda used to have ACOA, and I have friends who I've known for a long time, and I've been really impressed by their detachment and their peace of mind around their family. I mean, they worked for good boundaries and all that, but I don't get phone calls from them all the time going on and on and on about mom and dad, I mean, there's some naivete, but I'm just very impressed. And, about praying for other people. It can make a difference it can make a difference because people are not always spiritually fit, you know? Some days are worse than others, and sometimes things come out of one's mouth that you wish you hadn't heard. But I am impressed by the diligence. A lot of the ACOA kids I see are kids, they're in their 20s and 30s. I'm just very impressed by that. Also, you mentioned Seneca House, which is gone. And last year I read a book about a woman who, in her recovery, Leslie Jameson, and she talks about recovering from alcoholism and challenges and worry about not being creative. And she did research Seneca House. It was really quite interesting. So you can get it in the library. Thanks.
Anyone else have any comments for Stephen or questions for Stephen? Oh, go ahead, Stephen. I saw you on mute.
I was just going to thank Jan. I think Leslie Jameson was at Seneca House since she even named the dog that was there. So I'm not sure that it wasn't written under a, what do you call that, when somebody writes under a false name.
Under a pseudonym, yeah. Well, I mean, she's around. She's a professor in Harvard and all that. So, but she was it was eye-opening, and I had some thoughts about recovery places, and she really illuminated it. And she talks very frankly about the worries of, I mean, people who've been really gifted actors and writers, they felt like they're scared of getting sober, etc., because they don't trust their genius, that, you know, their genius is there. But many people died really young. So that's enough. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, I have one more question. What's the difference between Al-Anon and adult children of alcoholics?
For me, there's not a whole lot of difference. So ACOA, my wife's whispering in my ear. ACO, Jan hit it on the head. For me, I don't know that I can answer the difference. The biggest thing is the detachment with love. I've come to find out that my anger is really my hurt. So almost anytime I'm angry at anything having to do with anything, it's really because my feelings are hurt or I'm scared. Anger is the biggest mask in the world for me, and I hid behind it for a long time. And I feel like I should almost have started off my speaking with, and now COVID separated us by a few states. My folks are down in Florida. I don't ever remember my father telling me he loved me until we're both in recovery. And I'm able to hug my father, and I would do anything for my parents, and they accept me and love me. And we have a restored relationship because of recovery in ACOA and Al-Anon. My mom went to Al-Anon for years, and because of Alcoholics Anonymous and treatment programs. I actually have a relationship with my parents. And I don't believe that would have been possible without the help of the recovery community, because I surely couldn't have done this thing alone. Just for Michael to say something like, look for the good in the people. I had no idea. I saw the world, it was just all negative. And it's just not that way, especially with wonderful, beautiful people like you all.
All right. Well, let's thank Stephen for awesome introduction to adult children of alcoholics. That was awesome. And, you know, like I said, if you can put information about that pathway in the chat, or your contact information, if you're comfortable with that, And for people who want to ask further questions, that would be awesome.